morning. Welcome to the Fearless Morning Show. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Fearless Morning Show, where we are having confessions and conversations about your everyday life. Why can't I log in? Oh, there it goes. Hope you guys are ready to get this day started. Hope you had a great weekend. I hope you were safe. Hope you had a great time. Hope you enjoyed this beautiful sunshine because it's a beautiful weekend. So good morning. Let's see if this now is going to work for me. Okay. Good morning, guys. Good morning. Hope you had a great weekend. I know I did. I found some water. I had a migraine for the first time in years. And it really kicked my butt all day. All day. So let's get right into the fearless quote of the day. And I have two. The first one is, he who fears he will suffer already suffers because he fears. He who fears he will suffer already fears because he suffers. And that's by Michael D. Montague. The second one is, without observation, learning is impossible. Without observation, learning is impossible. Both of those are true. You've got to, in order to grow, you've got to observe where you are. And absolutely learning is impossible if you're not willing to do that. And some of us are not willing to observe where we are so that we can learn and move forward. Some of us can observe where we are and know what we're learning from it and still not move forward. We insist on being right where we are. And you've got to learn, if that's your truth, to be okay with that. And then there's us. He who fears he will suffer already suffers because he fears. That means you scared. You say you scared and you acting out being scared. And because, hold on. There we go. Maybe that should be better. All right, there you go. I love that quote. He who fears he will suffer already suffers because he's feared. Remember that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway? If you are already scared and afraid, you're going to continue to be scared and afraid. Period. So what you going to do about it? You're afraid of what you're afraid of. You're not afraid of doing it. Because in that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, it says 75% of what you're afraid of is in your mind. And when you actually do it, then you realize it was never a fear anyway. It was the unknown that you were afraid of. It was you questioning your ability to do something. You thinking that you could achieve something was fearful. It wasn't that you were afraid to jump. When I realized it wasn't my fear of water that I was afraid of, it was my fear that I couldn't control the water. That was my problem. So, he who fears he will suffer already suffers because he's feared. So, you darned if you do and darned if you don't at that point, because you've already given into the fear and it is guiding you every step of the way. And without observation, learning is impossible. What are you observing and what are you willing to learn? I love those two quotes. I could probably go on about them forever. Let's go right into the thought of the day. And the thought of the day is open a door. So I'm going to read this from a book. Those who keep their minds closed cut themselves off from the life-giving vitality of the divine. Those who want to open themselves up to it and those who want to open themselves up to the divine will find the influx of great energy. There are two leaves of each person's door, are ignorance and selfishness. The ignorant think that they know everything, and so they're not open to anything new. The selfish cannot think beyond themselves, so they do not have the foresight or the qualities needed to understand the divine. The wise open their doors and let the vitality of the divine flow freely. So we're talking about open the doors. I know like 2 months ago we talked about you're the doorkeeper and you get to say who gets to come in. But I like this one because it's talking about learning to open the doors, and that it represents a leaf, and there's two parts to this leaf. There is arrogance and there is selfishness. And the arrogant, y'all, good morning, think that they know everything, and so they're not open to anything new. The selfish can't think beyond themselves, and so they don't have the foresight or the qualities needed to understand what they're put here for. And then the wise open their doors wide and let the divine flow freely. Those who keep their minds closed off cut themselves off from the life-giving vitality of the divine. I read this in a book and I was like, this is amazing, because at some point in life, this has represented me where I was too arrogant to understand what was going on, or I thought I knew it all, or I wanted to be selfish and keep everything that I knew to myself, because that is also being selfish. If you know a thing and you keep it to yourself and you don't wish to share it with anyone else. If you have the mindset, well, I had to learn, then they're going to have to learn too. I had to figure it out for myself. Why would you want your sister or your brother to experience the heartache or the frustration or the difficulty that you did trying to achieve a thing when you have the information? Is that not selfish of you? Can you say that you are a God's girl, man? Can you say that you're walking, if you're religious, walking in Christ? Can you do that when you are a hoarder of information and you are making your sisters and your brothers' journey harder because you are selfish with the information and you don't want to share it because, hey, you had to learn it, so they need to learn it for themselves. When you have everything, and here's the thing, and I think it goes both ways. You being selfish and hoarding the information and them being arrogant enough not to ask the question. Sometimes people want to come and ask us questions, but they can see our arrogance and our selfishness a mile away, and so they don't come and ask us. And so they go around the mulberry bush 50 times instead of asking us, and they refuse to ask us because we're not humble enough in our growth to say, okay, you can come ask me something. Because when you're growing, in your growth, you should become more humble. That should be a natural progression for you. When you grow and you learn, it's not to become arrogant and say, oh, wow, look at me, I've learned this great thing. It is to be humble so that you can be your sisters and your brother's keeper, to say, listen, now that I have learned this, let me allow the information to flow back. Remember we talked about leaving the clues and the pieces for our sisters and our brothers? That's what that's for, but you have to be humble with it. So some of us are arrogant and selfish all at the same time. We're arrogant because we think we know everything, and we're selfish because we have the information and we don't want to share it with anybody. And so you are out here making life harder for all of those whom you come in contact with. So someone may want to ask you a question, but in your arrogance and them seeing your selfishness, because what is consistent is what is true. Remember, your character, we talked about that, is lining up with where you need to be. They can see that, and it often speaks before you ever will. Without observation, learning is impossible. And that means that you're not going to learn. You're not going to learn from where you are. You're going to keep repeating the same thing and have no idea why you keep repeating the same thing, why you keep having the same conversation, because you're not observing and learning from your current situation. He who fears, he will suffer, already suffers because he fears. That means you're scared, and you are scared because you said you're scared. And y'all, it all begins with your mindset. If you joined me Thursday, we talked about the 5 keys to live past crazy, and we went a little deep in that. And the step one is to be quiet. I don't want us to over exaggerate that part, that it truly is to be quiet, so that you can get some understanding, so that you can begin to observe who you are, your actions, and where your actions have taken you. At some point, JoJo, you got to hold yourself accountable for all the actions you've done. Not the actions that of people who have done things to you. No. JoJo, hold yourself accountable for the actions you have done, the thought processes that you had. Because some of us are reactive to life and not proactive. We saw this thing coming. We saw it happening, but we assumed we had no power to stop it, and so we just allowed it to happen. You allowed the flow of chaos. You allowed the flow of destruction. You allowed the flow of, I don't know what to do, to enter into your space and to take over. And so now it's a whirlwind and you're trying to stop it, but you don't know how. And it's going to take you sitting down, being quiet, and observing and learning and taking responsibility for your thought process that got you here. Does that make sense? Like at some point, I've got to stand up to me and say, no, this is what you did, and this is the reason for this. We're not looking at outside forces. We're looking at our participation in the thing. And then we're going to observe and learn from that. And now we can move forward. Because I think once you learn, and y'all, here's the thing about being scared to do something. Okay? Once you get quiet and you start to look at what am I really afraid of? And ask yourself, why are you afraid? Then you start asking harder questions that give you clearer answers till you get to the point where you realize it wasn't that you were afraid of the thing. You were afraid of the possibilities of yourself. I like that. You are afraid of the possibilities of yourself. And that, my sister, that's why you're scared. That's why you won't move. You are afraid of the possibilities of yourself. You are afraid that if you sat still for just a minute, that answer that you said you wanted is going to catch up with you, and it's going to demand that you do something about your current situation. So some of us will continue to stir the pot. We'll continue to keep the chaos going. We will say we don't understand, and we will make it, remember, we will make it great so we don't have to deal with the smallness of us. We're going to make it great. Oh, but you don't understand. I don't have any money. You don't understand how hard it is for me. You don't understand what it's like to do this. And you will bring the dramatics, and you will bring the glitter and the balloons and the sounding cymbals, and you will bring all of that with you, all the noise of it, when it simply takes you being quiet to address the issue of it. And some of us, honey, we rather bring the band, the rain, the thunder, the hurricane, the tornado. We'd rather do anything in the world than to deal with what we need to deal with. He who fears, he will suffer, already suffers because he fears. You don't like your situation. You talk about what you don't like about your situation, and that keeps you going. I learned the hard way that some people, they enjoy that. They have to have that in order to live, and they don't know how to live any other way. It makes no sense to them not to live this way, not to have this chaos. And so when you try to introduce, and listen, it doesn't have to be chaos like I'm describing. It could be the chaos of complaining. It could be the chaos of never liking anything. It could be the chaos of talking about other people. It could be the chaos of them not wanting to help anybody because nobody helped them. And I want you to understand, with those mindsets, everything will always be hard. It will always be difficult. You will never understand how people can have different than what you have. The logic of it will surpass you at all times. because you are the ignorant and the selfish. The ignorant thinks they know everything, and so they're not open to anything new. And the selfish can't think beyond themselves, so they do not have the foresight, the qualities to see or understand the divine that lives in them. Some people want that. I had to learn that the hard way. They want to be scared. And they want to be scared and allow those fears to take them. They will never enjoy anything in life. And one thing I was thinking this weekend, and it made me, I'm a crier. When I think a thought, and I'm like, wow, allow yourself to feel those things. It's okay. And I was thinking, my God, how hard is it to intentionally, because this is in everything that you do in life is intentional. Every thought process that you have is intentional. Every feeling that you have is intentional. Everything that you allow to happen, everything that you don't allow to happen, everything that comes in contact with you is intentional. Period. So it hurt me in my head. It hurt my heart and my head to understand that some people, like how hard it must be, how difficult it must be to use all of your innate power that you are given. And even if you assume that you don't have no power, okay, but to use all of your energy for the day, you get up and you complain. You eat and you don't like nothing you taste. You drink and it don't taste right. You put on clothes and it's ugly. You comb your hair, you don't like it. You get in your car, something's wrong with it. You're driving down the street, the people are crazy. You get in the store, ain't nothing that you like. You go visit people, they get on your nerves. The phone rings, you don't want to talk. That is exhausting beyond belief. And there are some people that would allow their lives to exhaust them because they don't want to observe what's really going on. They rather continue to run from that answer so they don't have to deal with it. They would rather be the ignorant and the selfish. They would rather do all of that than simply, because is that not? You would rather live your life in all of that intentionally than to allow the divine to flow freely. Like you are doing so much work pushing against the divine that's in you. That's a hell of a lot of work. That's a hell of a lot of pushing. That's a lot. At what point do you say, you know what, I'm exhausted. I'm tired of me getting in my way. Let me rest, because some of us, our minds need to rest because we've given our mind and our body an impossible task of always picking out something that's wrong in life. Our body it's exhausted. It is wore the hell out. It doesn't know what to do. It can't receive. That's why you can't receive anything good. And when somebody tries to do something nice for you, the arrogance and the selfishness come. Oh, she didn't do that for me. She did that for herself. Oh, well, I know this. Y'all, that has got to be exhausting. And I think you do that because you are afraid of your possibilities. You are afraid that the endless possibilities that are set before you may demand something of you. And because you're not willing to give what life is demanding of you, you got to tell life why you hate it. So then my question simply becomes, what is the point of you living? If you hate everything about life, if nothing brings you joy, if you can't enjoy the birds chirping because the grass is wet, you can't enjoy the food because they didn't cook it right, if you don't like this outfit because it wasn't made right, what is the purpose of your life? Why are you here? Why do you take the breath from the greatness of all of us around us if you don't even like the breath that you take? Y'all, it is, It is so that simple. I don't know why I'm so emotional about that thing. It is so that simple. You ain't got to justify it with me. That's between you and the divine, whoever you pray to, whoever you think leads and guides you. That's the answer you got to give to them, because you're telling the divine in you ain't nothing you ever did on this here earth or within me, in the creation of me, is good enough for me. Y'all, that is so beyond exhausting, and it breaks my heart to see people live like that. It hurts my feelings because I see them, they're alive, but they're dead. And they are only here for the purpose to say that they're here. They're not here enjoying this life. They're not here doing anything other than complaining about what greatness was put here for them. And could it be that they're afraid of the possibilities of themselves? Amen, keeper. If you're afraid of the possibility of yourself, okay. But can you deal with that? Can you start to learn? Can you stop for a second and observe the habits and the triggers that you're setting for? And here's the thing, y'all. You are not only setting it up for yourself, you are setting it up for everyone who comes in contact with you. So I'm a whole experience. When I want you to meet JoJo, there's certain things I want you to walk away with. Think about that. When people interact with you, they're walking away with certain things. What are they walking away with when they see you? Because you are a small business and you're offering the service of you. And the service of you is how you treat people. The service of you is what words come out of your mouth. The service of you is your attitude, how you present yourself. And at all times you represent the divine, but every day you are telling whomever comes in contact with you, the divine who created this here earth, who gave breath to your body, it ain't even enough for you. How is that possible? So my question becomes, what is the purpose of you taking the breath from the divine whom you don't even honor with saying thank you sincerely? Because some of us can say thank you and in the same breath, I'm glad to be alive, but I don't like. Praise God, but look at this, but. So what is the purpose of you taking a breath from the one who gives it to you if you don't even like who gave it to you? He who fears he will suffer already suffers because he fears. Without observation, learning is impossible. And that's how you can complain. That's how you cannot move forward. Because you are afraid of the possibilities of yourself. You are afraid of the possibilities of your greatness. You are afraid that the divine who created you is going to say, excuse me, I put you here for a reason, and you're not doing it. Why is that? And that's the question you got to answer for yourself. Whether you believe in God, heaven, hell, whatever, whomever you believe in, every religion requires something of you. Everything, period, whether you meditate, whether it's Buddha, whether it's whomever, they all require something of you. Those who keep their minds closed cut themselves off from the life-giving vitality of the divine. Those who want the divinity open themselves up so that it creates an influx of the energy. The ignorant think they know everything, and so they're not open to anything new. The selfish cannot think beyond themselves, so they have no foresighted qualities needed to understand the divine. The wise open the doors wide and let the divine flow freely. Let's take it back to the scripture. If you're a God's girl, in Isaiah, I want to say 54, it said your foundations are made with rubies. Okay, thank you. It says, but if you open the doors wide, it said if you take the sides off your tent, then I could enlarge what I am giving you. Here the arrogant and the selfish wants to keep their little tent falling over because they want to keep everything to themselves. And now their tent is squashed and everything that's inside of there is no longer any good to them or anybody else. But boo, if you would just release yourself from that, okay? Take the size off your tent so your territory can be enlarged, which is going to require something from you. It's going to require something. It's going to require you thinking differently. It's going to require you moving forward. It's going to require you checking that fear at the door. I ain't saying you ain't never going to be afraid. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying, boo, is that in that fear, you step anyway. You move with it anyway. You say, fear, I see you, but you don't stop me. I acknowledge you, and you may be fueling me moving forward, but I'm not stopping. You don't get the privilege to stop me. You don't get the honor of stopping the divine that's in me. I'm not going to let you override that power. You cannot be afraid of the possibilities of yourself. You cannot. Because if you become afraid of the possibilities of yourself, you will stop living this life. And you will complain about everything, every step of the way. And you will tell me, Jojo, you will never understand. You will never understand my story because your story different. But I understand the journey, boo. You ain't going to understand my story either. Because it's not yours to tell. Your story is yours to tell. It is the journey that we take together. You cannot be afraid of the possibilities of your greatness. You cannot. If you become afraid of the possibilities of your greatness, you will not move past where you are at all, ever. And it is that simple, but yet we seem to make it that complicated. So on this wonderful Monday, on this absolutely wonderful Monday, just for today, I don't want you to be afraid of your possibilities. Just for today, I'm asking that you not complain about a thing. That you look at the greatness inside and around you. And allow that energy, just for today, to move you forward. It is amazing when you begin to understand the journey of it. When you begin to understand the journey and whatever your purpose is, great or small. And I believe that all purposes are amazingly great, right? Your purpose is yours and yours to give. I can't do it. Nobody can give it but you. And when you begin to understand your journey and the power that rests in you, that was given only to you to do this thing, then you're no longer afraid of your possibilities. You allow them to flow. Like it says, the wise opens the doors and allows the vitality of the divine to flow freely. Right now it's hard because maybe the divine can't flow freely. Maybe the energy that you need, the idea, the thought process, whatever it is that you need at this moment, it can't come through because all your doors are shut. All the windows are shut. You are insisting that you have no greatness in you. You are insisting that you will put here nothing for no other reason than to complain about it. So on this wonderful Monday morning, I have a couple of questions. Why are you afraid of your possibilities of yourself? Why do you insist on not looking at your greatness? Why do you insist on not allowing yourself to be great? Remember, you're qualified to be exceptional. Why do you insist on complaining? And some of us, we only see death and destruction everywhere we look. And you don't see the life everywhere you look. It is truly all in the vision and the things that you see. Thank you, Kiva. So why are you focusing on the death and destruction? Because one thing we know, death is sure. We know that it's coming, right? We know that it's coming for every person. That's one journey you've got to take along. But in the meantime, why are you living it here? Why do you breathe the breath of life with death? Why do you do that? Why do you do that? So on this wonderful Monday, y'all, I didn't mean to cry, but that just got me. He who fears he will suffer already suffers because he fears. Period. Without observation, learning is impossible. You cannot be afraid of the possibilities of yourself. You cannot tell me, Jojo, you don't understand where I'm coming from. You can use that excuse for yourself, and you can validate it with yourself all day long. But then my next question becomes, but why do you take a breath of death instead of a breath of life? Why? Why is that? Those who keep their minds closed cut themselves off from the life-giving vitality of the divine. And those who want the divinity themselves, those who want to open themselves up to it and the great influx of the energy of it. The ignorant. There are two leads of each person's door, ignorance and selfishness. The ignorant think they know everything, so they're not open to anything new. The selfish cannot think beyond themselves, and they do not have the foresight qualities needed to understand the divine. And the wise open the doors and let the divine flow freely. We all have options. We all have options. So that is my question on this wonderful Monday. Thank you so much for joining the Fearless Morning Show. If this is your first time, I welcome you to the Fearless Morning Show, where we're having confessions and conversations about your everyday life. My name is Yamitra Jojo Waddell, the only Live Past Crazy specialist. So what better place to be than here with me? But y'all, I just have some questions this morning. And before I started crying, the lesson that I learned this weekend is that some people, with me not understanding how that they can complain about everything and not even acknowledge be happy with the smallest of things, I had to realize that they built that life themselves. Remember, we talked about if you don't move, then you become the structure. You become resistant to change, and then you can't understand it. Well, they have built this narrow tunnel because so many things have seemed to go wrong so often. They can't possibly comprehend that anything could ever go right. And so in thinking that all things are wrong are going to come to me at all times, they have built this tunnel vision. And it doesn't matter how many pieces of life come into their sphere or how many blessings that make just, and here's the thing, they getting the blessings, the tip of the iceberg. They ain't even really, they standing on a blessing they had 20 years ago, not the abundance of blessings that they can receive daily. They're not. And so their vision is tunnel, right? Good morning, my brother. And so their vision is tunnel, and they can't see what is here. And because they can't see it, they can't understand it. They just can't. And they never will until they assume that this is not all that there is to it. And that is not, good morning, Tracy. It is not my place to change that for them. It is my place to be the seed giver. To say, hey, let me plant this seed, this thought in front of you. And if I continue to plant that seed, then perhaps you will see something that could possibly grow from that. But I had to learn to be okay with y'all. That was my lesson this weekend. I had to learn to be okay with that. That some people are afraid of the possibilities of themselves. And I can't change that, no matter how much I may want to. I cannot. I have to accept their life just like they are accepting it, right? So in my growth process, we cannot be arrogant and we cannot be selfish. In our growth process, we absolutely have to be humble, so that if me as a seed planter and I planted something, and as a space giver, and if I provided you a safe space, then, and this goes for all my sisters and brothers, if you're the leader of your family and somebody sees you growing and changing, don't be arrogant when they come back to you. Be humble, because they're going to come and say, hey, man, Joe, how did you do that again? And that, my sister and my brothers, where you are the safe space, that is where you're finally seeing the seed break the ground, so that they are starting to think differently. And then in that spot, that's where you've got to be humble and say, okay, let me show you. Let me continue to give you a safe space to know. Because somebody's waiting on me to move, and they will not move until I move. Period. So I'm going to be that safe space, whatever it may be for them. I have to realize I can't change their life, but I can give them the space that they need. I cannot, at my big day, say, baby, you can't make that horse drink nothing if he ain't thirsty. But you can give them the water so that it's always available. So if you're on your journey, make yourself always available to your sister or your brother. Wherever you are on your journey, don't be selfish and an information hoarder so that you keep it to yourself. Open it up so that others can see that it is okay, and that you're qualified to be exceptional. They're qualified to be exceptional, and there's more than enough for everybody. He who fears he will suffer already suffers because he fears. So without observation, learning is impossible. The first step to live past crazy is to be quiet. And in the being quiet, you have the opportunity to observe your own thought processes. And then you have got to validate that with yourself, not with anybody else. JoJo has to answer those questions. Joe, you knew what was happening. And then not to become a victim of life. Because if you don't observe, you can become the victim of life. Sister, you are powerful. Brother, you are powerful. Can we use it for our greatness? For this wonderful Monday, can we understand that if we open up the door for the divine to flow freely, it surely will. It can't, because you got all the windows and the door shut. So just crack it a little bit and allow the divine to flow freely today. I enjoyed this show. I'm glad I shared with y'all what I learned this morning. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If it was something that helped you, please let me know. Please share it with your friends and your family. If they do not have Facebook, send them over to the YouTube channel. They can binge watch all the Fearless Morning shows. Or if they listen to podcasts, this will be on the podcast later today, and you can share it with them. I'm on Apple Podcasts. I'm on Stitcher, wherever podcasts are found. It is the Live Past Crazy show, and they can listen to this. They probably don't want to listen to me crying, but hey, I was passionate about that thing. I do not want us to be afraid of our possibilities. That is a quote from me, and my own quote has earned a spot on the wall of quotes today. You cannot be afraid of your possibilities. And that's why, sister and brother, you're not moving. That's why you're not growing, because you're not opening yourself up to understand that your greatness, it is here. It is before you. It is ready to allow and to flow freely. If you just give it the opportunity. You've given everything else an opportunity. You've complained enough about life, so you got that part. Can we try something new now? Just for today. So on this wonderful Monday, I want you to have an amazing day. Please make sure you share the show. I would greatly appreciate it. I cannot be my sister's keeper without you. And y'all know I'm a firm believer if I can help one sister and give her just a piece of information. And y'all, I'm just sharing some steps and things that I've learned along the way that have helped me. And prayerfully, they can help somebody else. And if I can help that sister, who will then help her family, who will change her community, we will change the world. One sister at a time. So if you have an amazing day, please be peaceful, period, because there's nothing after that. I want you to have an amazing day. Remember, you are qualified to be exceptional. You are absolutely qualified to be exceptional. All right, guys, have an amazing Monday, and I'll see you guys here bright and early tomorrow morning. Have a good one.